Hong Kong held elections for its 70-member Legislative Council, known as LegCo. 6 of the successful candidates were localists, as those who support greater independence for the territory are often described. It is their first presence in LegCo and is sure to anger China, which fears they will use their new positions to push for a referendum on Hong Kong's relationship with the mainland. See here and here. Uzbekistan buried Islam Karimov, the blood-drenched despot who ruled the country since independence after the breakup of the Soviet Union in 1991. His death was announced after days of feverish speculation about his health. Vladimir Putin laid flowers on his grave. The Taliban launched a series of attacks in Kabul, the Afghan capital. The Defense Ministry and the offices of a charity were among the targets. At least 35 people were killed. Rodrigo Duterte, the president of the Philippines, responded to a bombing in his hometown of Davao by deploying the army to help in his current crackdown on drug dealing and other crimes. He also caused a diplomatic kerfuffle by calling Barack Obama a son of a whore. See article. More than hot air. Building on pledges made 2 years ago, America and China said they were committed to implementing last year's Paris Accord on climate change. America and China account for 40% of the world's carbon emissions. Mr. Obama plans to bypass the Republican-controlled Senate, which is required to give its approval to any treaty, reasoning that the agreement constitutes an executive action. He may try to push the deal through before he leaves office in January. Hurricane Herman battered North Florida. It was the first hurricane to hit the state since Wilma in 2005, and caused a lot less damage. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump took part in a televised forum that focused on foreign policy. In a preview of what to expect from the presidential debates, Mrs. Clinton stumbled to answer searching questions on issues such as Iraq and her misuse of emails, whereas Mr. Trump got away with some bizarre and some invented statements. Dumped because of Trump. Mexico's finance minister, Luis Videgaray, resigned after helping to organize the recent unpopular visit to the country by Donald Trump. The Republican presidential candidate is rather disliked in Mexico because of his disparaging remarks about migrants. The departure of Mr. Videgaray was seen as a chance for Mexico's president, Enrique Pena Nieto, to improve his dire poll ratings. See article. As opposition to Venezuela's leftist regime mounted on the streets, the authorities charged a journalist, Braulio Gitar, with money laundering. He had used social media to publicize an incident in which President Nicolas Maduro was jostled and humiliated by pot-banging women in a working-class district that was once his stronghold. See article. A wounded animal. At least 40 people were killed in a series of bombings in Syria for which Islamic State, IS, claimed responsibility. Possibly synchronized explosions took place in Tartus, Homs and a suburb of Damascus, all areas held by the government, and in Haska, which is controlled by Kurdish forces. Turkey sent more tanks into northern Syria and is closer to sealing off ISIS access to its border. Turkey's president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, said that together with America, Turkey could soon expel IS from its Syrian capital, Raqqa. America urged Bahrain to release a prominent human rights campaigner, Nabil Rajab, who was detained earlier in the summer and is believed to be facing further charges for writing to the New York Times. Somalia's beleaguered government began to implement a ban on flights to Mogadishu, the capital, from neighboring Kenya that carry cat, a narcotic popular among Somalis. Illicit flights to other parts of the country will doubtless ensue. See article. The migrant crisis. In Germany's regional elections, a fifth of the voters in Angela Merkel's home state, Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, plumped for the anti-immigrant Alternative for Germany, AfD, party, pushing Mrs. Merkel's center-right Christian Democrats into third place. The Social Democrats came first. Mrs. Merkel acknowledged that many Germans have lost trust in her liberal refugee policy. European foreign ministers met Turkey's European Union Affairs Minister, Ömer Çelik. The hot topic was the deal to slow the flow of migrants into the EU. Despite Turkey's earlier threats to renege on the deal if Europe failed to lift visa restrictions on Turks, all concerned at the meeting gave assurances that it would be implemented. Hungary's Prime Minister, Viktor Orbán, and the leader of Poland's Nationalist Law and Justice Party, Jaroslaw Kaczynski, join forces to launch a cultural counter-revolution to put an end to Europe's crisis of conscience. Mr. Orbán's anti-immigrant government has formed close ties with Poland since Mr. Kaczynski's party took power there last October. Russia's last remaining independent polling firm, the Levada Center, was designated a foreign agent by the government, 2 weeks ahead of parliamentary elections. No reason was given for the decision, but Levada had recorded a drop in support for United Russia, Vladimir Putin's ruling party. Theresa May, Britain's Prime Minister, said she opposes an Australian-style points system to control immigration. The system was one of the main promises to control our borders made by the campaign to leave the EU, but Mrs. May has repeatedly noted its shortcomings. She also indicated a strong desire to reintroduce an element of selection in education, possibly by reviving the grammar school system. That would reverse a decades-old policy held by successive governments. See article. At the G20 summit, Mrs. May talked about trade deals with Australia and China. She downplayed her decision to review the Hinkley Point nuclear power plant deal in which China has a stake and declared that the two countries were entering a golden era in relations. Chinese officials were not so positive. Reference: www.economist.com weblink.